Now, so this wasn't on the docket of topics, but since you said date outside your race, we're gonna go ahead and talk about it. So the reason I want to keep going off of that is because I feel like, and I've seen this even in the manosphere where a lot of guys are saying like, you ain't gonna find no feminine women here, man. Go out the country, get your passport, go find a wife. Right? That's like the whole new talking point. It's like everyone just like all black people don't date each other. So what I want to talk about is why do you think that's what's going on with black people specifically? Because to me, and maybe I'm just in a bubble, but I don't hear white people saying date outside your race. I don't hear Spanish people saying date outside your race. Asian people, like they're a tight-knit community. Why are we having that issue within the black community?
Because our black men are being jailed and incarcerated at a higher rate than any other race, because our black men historically have been lynched and killed at a higher rate than any other race. And again, I always like to bring it back to historical context, because you can't have these conversations honestly if we don't put the historical context into
that point up. I'm just glad you brought that point up, because the reason I'm happy that you brought that point up is because when we talk about a large group of people being affected negatively, like I don't like this idea of oh, you just got the wrong mentality. Like, no, the wrong mentality doesn't affect millions of people. We got to talk about the bigger issue here, which is a systemic problem, and that's not to make an excuse for mediocrity.
No,
but you gotta understand. Yeah, we gotta understand. It's much harder. As a black man, I understand that I have to work twice as hard to get to where my white counterparts are.
Yeah, same thing with black women, right? But I recently saw that there are more incarcerated men in Mississippi than those there are more incarcerated men. Mississippi has the highest population of incarcerated men. Of course, we know that the largest majority of those incarcerated men are black men.
Yeah.
So if I am a black woman in the state of Mississippi right now, me trying to find a good man, a solid man, we ain't even talking about the 360s, right? I'm talking about a black man alive and breathing and not incarcerated. If there's only one or two in the neighborhood, then those type of conversations make sense of like polyamory or polygamous relationships might make sense, because if Mississippi is jailing black men at that high of a rate, out in Mississippi, we could become extinct eventually. The numbers could put us to the point where it's like we would become extinct if we are solely waiting on the few black men who are not behind bars and probably, with extensive sentences.
It's hard to find a good black man when we all getting locked up.
Right. Or where you're in a state where the majority, there are more men incarcerated than there are men on the street, right? So we have to look, again, the historical context.
And real quick, and before people say, oh, well, y'all need to stop committing crime, black people are also the most falsely
convicted,
most falsely accused, most falsely convicted.
The highest sentencing, black people, black men, black people in general are always getting higher sentences.
So it's not even necessarily we're doing anything wrong. Sometimes we just get locked up just cause. So it's not, so sometimes you can have the right mentality, but when you're in a situation where it's almost like no way out. And
think about it, if you're in a state like Mississippi that's already incarcerating at what I personally feel the DOJ should be doing is investigating, but incarcerating at a ridiculous rate. And again, I don't want to go down the full rabbit hole of that, right? Which, can talk about resources and schools and all that stuff, right? But if you have these areas like that, when we talk about stepping outside of your race, it's about survival.
Right.
And when I say stepping outside of your race, again, I'm not saying you have to date white.
Right.
You may be dating Hispanic. You may be dating, Indian, like people from India. You may be dating brown and being able to keep that. Now, yes, you talked about it earlier. A lot of those cultures generally don't say that in the same nature that we do. A lot of, especially colonized area, like for instance, Indians, right? They're very big about, if you are going to date outside of your race, white is right. Black, never. Like that's not even close to being an option. And so you do have certain cultures and races that do feel that way. Not everybody. And so when you get into these conversations, it is very important, like I said, to keep the context, but it's also about survival. And so the reason why I always tell people, I'm an equal opportunity employer over here. I am open to dating outside of my race because number one, I travel. Number two, when I travel, I still generally meet more Black people. And when I mean Black, I mean, I was in Montreal last year. I went on a date with a guy who was Haitian. I was in Portugal. I went on a date with a guy who's from Mozambique. So when I say date outside of our race, I'm not necessarily saying date white, because I feel like that's what people hear when they hear
as far as dating
Black women dating outside of their race. Because when they hear, oh yeah, Black women, you should date outside of your race, what is the first thing you think about? You probably think about Serena Williams. You probably think about Eve. You're thinking about our Black queens. Our
so you're talking about like the African American mindset. And it's interesting because I even see that with Africans. Like the Africans that I know here in America, they are tend to get married much quicker than my African American friends. And so I guess so with the understanding of the things that African Americans specifically, because I feel like our journey is unlike other Africans, which they face discrimination, but like specifically what we've been through is,
and our journey is unlike here in America is unlike any other experience of people of color. And the only other group, in my opinion, that has had it worse are natives. Native Americans have been completely wiped out. I think African Americans are a very close second. And then I would definitely say Mexican Americans.
It's funny you brought that up because I always give like Native Americans like number one because you don't even see them no more. I'm like, dang, bro.
Native Americans were genocided, and that we have to realize that as Black people, we our plight is bad, but Native Americans not only have been genocided. If you look at the history of what has been done and what is currently the state of the Native American population, trust me, it will blow your mind. Like, as I started to learn more about it, it blows your mind. Watch Reservation Dogs. Great show. Absolutely. Have you watched it? Reservation Dogs?
No, I haven't.
Watch it.
Okay.
Great show. But our plight is unlike any other, even when you look at the history of America in Mexico. If you look at that, the history of America in Hawaii. Blew my mind with the history. But I use all that to say in context of the conversation of our plight is so different, but we also have to navigate it in a sense of survival. And so when you look at African American women dating outside of their race, dating someone who is Native, dating someone who is Mexican, dating someone who is Indian or something like that, that sometimes is our best survival technique, or dating someone who is African.
Let me say this. So with the understanding of what the plight that we've been through, African Americans, don't you think, like, do you feel like we should get
reparations? Yes.
No, not reparations. I mean, yeah, but but as far as when it comes to black people choosing other Black people, like, do you even, like, to me, like, I feel like, do you feel like that Black man should almost get the benefit of the doubt or get that second chance? So I'm gonna put it like this, right? I know that Black women are the most disrespected women on this planet. And so with that being said, and everything that they've been told, I almost make it a point to be like, yeah, I love Black women. You know what I'm saying? I think Black women are beautiful because I feel like me as a Black man, that's my job. And like, if no one else on this planet is going to love you, me as a Black man, I am going to love you. That's kind of like my view on it. I mean, Google, they got a little bit better, but there was a point in time when you put in beautiful woman, you couldn't
wouldn't be black.
You wouldn't see a person of color nowhere on there,
Yep.
right? And like that shit is damaging, you know, to the psyche. And so basically what I'm asking is like, you know, like shouldn't us as African Americans, like even if there is like that Haitian or that Sudanese or Kenyan brother or white Asian, like shouldn't we be giving each other a second look before we like go that route?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But
here we go.
We have to look at again what's in our household, right? So when we are looking at as a woman, as a black woman, I'll speak for all of us.
Right.
Okay. As a black woman, we're looking obviously inward, right? So what we see in our family and everything. And so naturally you are going to be attracted to what you see.
Right.
And for me, I grew up seeing very strong, you know, very masculine, big black men.
Right.
All of my uncles, and that's just what I saw. And so when I look for that spouse or that person, that is what there are certain characteristics I look for because that's what I always see, and it is generally going to be African American.
Okay.
The but comes in when outside of the historical aspects of being here, but because I travel and I enjoy traveling and I do date when I travel, it has opened my eyes to all of the different shades and what I saw is like, okay, that's great, but I'm seeing a few other things. I'm like, I like this too. You know, you it's the exposure aspect of it. So I don't, and this is not for everyone, but I think the reason why I say, date outside of your race and do that is because I hate having a podcast called Dating Over 30 Sucks and having conversations with women, specifically black women who have bad experiences, who have trauma stories and who have this and are still trying to stick beside them. You know, like I'm going to stick beside them. It hurts me because I want them to find love and I don't want them to limit themselves within these borders or limit themselves by race or saying he got to be. I have a friend who was like, he got to be African, like he got to be a black man. I'm like, oh, okay, black, cool, other blacks. She's like, nah, African American. I'm like, girl, okay, how that's, you know, it's part of me is like, well, if it hasn't worked in 30 plus years, we might need to try something a little different.
So look, like I feel what you're saying. Like I don't think we should like limit ourselves as far as our dating prospects go. And I'm not against interracial dating, but here's the thing that's sad to me. Like I'm afraid that we're pushing out the narrative that, girl, the only way you can find happiness is by leaving these African American men alone. And I've even heard that from men where it's like, man, you're never gonna find happiness with an African American woman. Go get, you know what I mean? Like I feel like, I don't know.
We about to agree to disagree because I got to counter to that. Go ahead.
It just doesn't sit right, and like it doesn't sit right with me that like our only answer is to date outside of our own culture. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I grew up with, you know, African American father, African American mother. I got African American sisters, and you trying to tell me that we can't like come together, we can't cohabitate, we can't love each other, we can't treat each other right? Like, there's something got to be wrong there.
So here is my disagreement or counter to that.
Okay, agree to disagree.
Is that you is my kind of counter to that is you have to look at the context of it. And when I say that is one thing I've noticed, and the specific example I want to give is Emmanuel Acho has this Tough Conversations with the Black Man. He has this YouTube series. And he had one on interracial dating, and he had two couples that were interracial. It was a black woman, a white man, a black man, and a white woman. And here's when it got really telling. I truly believe that his a lot of the context and conversation was very, in a way, kind of rude and tough to the black woman who had a white husband.
Yeah.
You gotta watch it. That's just I was like, damn, why he going to smack at her? Yeah. Compared to the black guy who's dating a white woman. Yeah. But he asks this very interesting question, and he asks, well, what made you decide to? It was very interesting. A lot of the conversation he had with the black man who had a white wife or white girlfriend, a lot of his reasoning had to do with trauma and things that happened to him from black women. Now, whether I can't speak to that, right? If you got bullied as a kid, maybe you was looking crazy. You was like, there's this funny meme about like some girls didn't like nerds because we was out here ashy, we was out here looking crazy, and now we done washed up and got some cute clothes, right? So, but when he asked the black woman about her white husband, it had nothing to do with black men. She said, well, what attracted to me was we had so much in common. I just love how he does this. And she talked about his characteristics, the person that she loved. That to me is love, girl, do you. Right. Whereas when you hear black men and they'll say those negative things, or the reason why they're with a white woman, like you said, you got to be a white woman because, man, black women nag, black women do this. To me, I'm like, you need to go sit with somebody. Who hurt you? Who was nagging at you? What did your mother do? What did your sisters do? What did these type of people do that brought you to this space? And not to get too personal, even in my life, that was one thing I noticed even about my uncles. I was like, who hurt? What happened? Something happened for both of y'all to date out your race, but none of my aunts or my mom did. And so, but I noticed it's the way they talk about their father, or my grandfather, even though he passed, the way they talk about him, I'm like, well, it makes sense. Right. I bring all of that up to say, and I give this example because when we talk about dating outside of our race, one thing that I have noticed specifically as a woman that's a little different and contrary to those type of comments is that women who date outside of their race, and I even have episodes on my podcast about it, they're dating outside of their race because they're not saying, well, I don't love black men, or I don't want to be with African American men. They're not saying that.
I'm gonna give you pushback.
Many of them are saying,
I'm gonna give you pushback.
I date outside of my, or I'm with a white man, or I'm with this other, someone outside of my race because they treated me well and they approached me a certain type of way and we just vibed and da-da-da-da. So I don't think it, I always say it kind of has to be about why are they choosing? Are people choosing just to say, because I told black women to do that because I'm like, hey, there's a lot out there. And if you're not happy in these type of situations, step outside of your comfort zone. Step outside. Consider stepping outside. Or I told, no, I'm like, step outside of your race. There's so many men out there. And it's not to say leave these black men here in America. I'm just saying, I say, go on a trip. Go to a country or a city you've never been in. I'm telling you, there's so much more outside than just what you're seeing here.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of pushback. Because so as far as like black women dating outside their race, and it's not having nothing negative to do with the black man, I'm gonna have to disagree. And I've actually just did a video on a black woman who was definitely talking down like, oh, well, black men are this. And other races are so much better. Like that comes from a place of hurt. And,
absolutely.
And even on my YouTube channel, this is why I also have to push back. Because even on my YouTube channel, which hopefully you guys are watching right now, I have black women coming on, commenting, telling me how dysfunctional black men are. So it's like, so I don't think it's just men who have a negative
trauma response.
Yeah, negative trauma response about their counterpart. I've seen it with black women as well, where it's like it's a hatred, like I hate you, like I'm disgusted by you. But the things that you're talking about, and even on both sides, whether it's negative or in the positive, I feel like that's behavioral. And so when I think about that, like, because you talk about like, oh, this guy treated me well, he did all this good stuff for me, he did this, he did that. Like, can't we get African American black men to treat black women like that? or to the opposite end, or it's like black men ain't this, black men ain't that, black men ain't this. Like, can't we like coach like or raise our sons in a ways where they're not those stereotypical things that black women talk about? You get what I'm saying?
I do.
Why is it like why can't like it's almost like we can't be fixed, and that's the thing that I reject. Like I reject that black men can't be fixed, and I reject that black women can't be fixed. Like I'm not gonna conform to this idea that all black women are loud, ghetto, masculine, and you know what I mean, and disagreeable.
Yeah,
right.
I guess something recently that like black women are real in their masculine. They're more in their masculine energy than any other race, and I'm like, right. I don't know how I feel about it.
Right, but see, that's what I'm saying. Like when I just said that, like I know you was like, nah, you know what I'm saying. But in the same way, like us men, black men, we don't like to be typecast either, as to like all black men ain't shit. They ain't got their shit together. They ain't got no job. They broke. They dusty. Like as a black man, like you gotta understand, like we don't like being typecast like that. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So personally, like I feel like, like we shouldn't be doing that to each other. But I'm saying like if we focus on that, like couldn't we make it work between each other?
We absolutely can. The question is, where's the capacity, right? When you think about just the whole context of what we've been talking about, where is the capacity for us to fix that? Like when I say reparations, like I remember one time I was having this big debate about reparations, and I said, reparations that could change the black community could be one of two things. Number one, I think all black people should have free access to therapy. Mm-hmm. And I said, if you gave all African Americans here in the United States free access to mental health therapy, what we're talking about, some of that divide, would instantly be lifted. Okay. I think some of that would absolutely put us more far. Future ain't gonna be the only one out here popping out kids. I'll be honest with you. Like I think if we had the ability to have free mental health care and to be able to break down some of those barriers, I don't think we would have as much incarceration because black men and our black sisters who are also incarcerated, free Brittany Griner, would be in positions where they're like, we don't have to do that. We're going to police our own communities. We got black men who are going to become police. They're only going to police our communities. We're going to do better in our own selves and this and another. We building up communities because you have to think about it. After Reconstruction, a lot of that boom came because of what? Black people, all of us collectively, were doing well. We were prospering. Even with the outside elements, we were doing so much better. And we have big families.
So add to that. In my opinion, I feel like that's, not to say don't date outside your race, but to the point of saying, you know what, I give up on my people and going off and going to another community, like is really like giving up on the community as itself versus finding that connection with somebody and being that positive couple that people, you get what I'm saying, look forward to being, and then raising your kids in that same form of fashion. If you go get with a white man, now you just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? Like, you might come out with a blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby, and
I was about to say something real rude.
Right, and now you're raising this outstanding young white man. You know what I mean? Instead of being with your own people, and I know you said not just white people, but I'm just giving you an example. Versus being with an African American, not being a statistic, marrying your own, actually helping the numbers within the marriage rates within this country. Like that's. I mean, to me, like I feel like
we done solved the problem.
Right, like
we done solved the problem.
I feel like that's doing your part, and so that's just for me, and maybe I'm just like an optimistic or something like that. But I feel like us, like we can work it out together, and like the divide between like black men and black women and the war, like it bothers me.
Yeah.
Like
one thing I think when you talk about racial mixing and everything, we are, again, African Americans are very unique. You know, we are so mixed and racially mixed, and I look at it the same way as you think of like Mexican history and the Aztecs. John Leguizamo does a really great history of it, which is, unfortunately, because of our situation, we're already so racially ambiguous and racially mixed that at this point we are trying to keep our bloodline together and keep the African American bloodline going. But just as natural evolution happens, that too is going to evolve. I mean, even we think about our families, right? My mom is a baby boomer, where having families with a bunch of siblings, that was common. Nowadays, our kids are going to grow up where it's like, oh, you got 3 siblings. It's like, good God, right? Like, I look at friends who have multiple kids, and I'm like, that's a lot of food. We've evolved. And so I use that as an example because I think with us, when we talk about interracial relationships or trying to keep, Black love and all stuff, we just are evolving and we have more access, Our parents, my grandmother wasn't traveling the same way at 36, right? Like, I'm 36. My grandmother at 36 was on baby number 3, 4. You know what I'm saying? And they weren't traveling all over the world like I am. So we are just in a more evolved state. And so I think our ideas and the conversations we have like this have to also evolve. We have to take historical context. We have to understand access that we have. We have to be realistic about dealing with issues in states like Mississippi, where there's no reason why this state has more incarcerated people than any other country in the world. That's a problem, right? So we have to be more. We can't be as black and white with these conversations. We have to be more involved in how we talk about these issues.
Okay. I think you made some really, really good points there. I think you really made, and I'm glad we had some disagreements because it creates a better dialogue and get different perspectives on different things. We weren't even meant to go down this topic. Well, once we got on it, I said, man, you know what? I'm all about Black love on this channel, so I was like, let's go ahead and
I'm like, how I've always felt about that. Like, I've always been equal opportunity.
Yeah,
but
you know what I mean? I mean, like, that's cool, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like again, like, go ahead, do your thing.
Love is love.
Love is love. But for me personally, like, and again, I know you didn't say just white, but it would take an exceptional white woman for me to take my eyes off of a Black woman.